Taman stared at the star map on his screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he studied the strange empty area. After working for 2 years at the Galactic Consortium's cartography division, he had never seen anything like it. A large section of the map was simply blank. The border had thick red lines with the words, "Human Space, No Entry," in bold letters. No stars, no planets, nothing. The rest of the map was beautiful and detailed. Every known system had proper labels. Gas, clouds, asteroid fields, trade routes, all carefully marked. But then everything just stopped at that border. Taman looked around the office. The other cartographers worked quietly at their stations. No one seemed bothered by the blank space. He stood up and walked to Director Kim's office, knocking softly on the door. "Enter," came Director Kim's voice. Taman stepped inside. Director Kim was an older woman with silver hair pulled back tightly. She looked up from her work with raised eyebrows. "Director Kim, I have a question about the official star charts," Taman said, placing his tablet on her desk and pointing to the blank area. "Why does the map end here? Why is there no data for human space?" Director Kim's face changed. Her professional smile disappeared. She quickly closed her office door and returned to her desk. "Taman, how long have you been with us?" she asked quietly. 2 years next month," he replied. "And in that time, did you never wonder about this area?" Taman shook his head. "I worked on the southern sectors until last week. This is my first time mapping anything near the human border." Director Kim sighed. "Some regions remain unmapped for good reason. But why? We have detailed information for every other sector, even the empty ones." "The matter is classified," Director Kim said, her voice dropping lower. She looked at her door as if worried someone might be listening. "If you truly want answers, speak with Senior Analyst Jiwoo. He works in the deep archives. But understand this, curiosity about human space has ended many promising careers." Taman left her office more confused than before. Why would asking questions about a map be dangerous? He returned to his desk but couldn't focus on his work. The blank space seemed to stare back at him. After his shift ended, Taman went to the lowest level of the building. The archives were old and dusty. Few people came down here now that most records were digital. The air smelled like old paper and forgotten things. "Hello?" Taman called out. His voice echoed through the tall shelves. "Back here," a voice answered. Taman followed the sound to find an elderly man sitting at a desk surrounded by physical star charts. This must be Jiwoo. His hands moved carefully over an ancient paper map. "Senior Analyst Jiwoo, Director Kim said I should speak with you." The old man looked up. "And what does Director Kim think I can help you with?" "Human space," Taman said. Simply. Jiwoo's hand stopped moving. He slowly put down his tools and studied Taman's face. "Sit down, young man," he said, pointing to a chair. "What exactly do you want to know? Why is it blank on our maps? Why can't we chart it like everything else?" Jiwoo's hands trembled slightly. "Have you ever met a human, Taman?" "No. I don't think anyone has, not in my lifetime." "I never met one either," Jiwoo said. "But I met someone who saw their ships, a trader who ventured too close to their border 50 years ago." Taman leaned forward. "What did he say?" "He told me their ships looked normal at first glance, just regular vessels. But when he tried to focus on any specific part, a thruster, a window, an antenna, his eyes couldn't hold it. His mind would slide away, like water off glass." He said, "Looking at their ships was like trying to remember a dream that keeps slipping away." Taman felt a strange chill run through him. "That doesn't make sense." "No, it doesn't," Jiwoo agreed. "And that's why we don't map their space. The few probes we've sent either disappear or return with corrupted data. The readings contradict each other. Stars that appear and disappear. Planets that change position. Physics that doesn't match our understanding." "What are they hiding?" Taman whispered. Jiwoo looked up at him with serious eyes. "Perhaps the better question is, what are they protecting us from? The border wasn't created to keep us out, young man. The humans built it to keep something else in. As Taman left the archives that evening, the blank space on the map seemed different to him now. Not just an unknown area, but a warning. Taman couldn't stop thinking about the blank space on the map. After his talk with Jiwoo, he spent every free moment in the archives looking through old records about human space. One night, buried in a forgotten file cabinet, he found something interesting. It was a report about an expedition from 30 years ago. The mission was called the Luminary Project. Commander Do-hyun had led 7 ships into human territory. According to the official record, only 1 ship came back. The report said a strange space storm destroyed the other ships. But something about the story didn't feel right to Taman. The details were too vague, and large sections of the report were blacked out. In the crew list, Taman noticed something important. 1 person had survived, Science Officer Minji. Even more surprising, the records showed she was still alive. She now lived on Outpost 7, a small research station far from any major worlds. Taman knew he had to talk to her. Getting to Outpost 7 wasn't easy. It took him 3 months to arrange transportation. He had to use all his savings and call in favors from friends who worked in shipping. The journey was long. Outpost 7 sat at the edge of controlled space, AI's tiny station orbiting a dead moon. When Taman finally arrived, he found a quiet place with fewer than 20 people living there. "I'm looking for Science Officer Minji," he told the station manager. The manager looked surprised. "No one comes here looking for Minji. She doesn't like visitors." "It's important," Taman said. "I need to ask her about the Luminary expedition." The manager's eyes widened. "Good luck with that. She's in Greenhouse 3. Taman followed the directions through the small station. Greenhouse 3 was at the far end, separate from the other buildings. Inside, warm, humid air filled with strange smells greeted him. Plants with unusual shapes and colors grew in neat rows. A woman stood among them, carefully cutting leaves from a blue plant. She looked about 60, with gray hair cut short and a thin face with deep lines. Her hands moved with careful precision. "Science Officer Minji?" Taman asked. She didn't look up. "No one calls me that anymore. Just Minji now." "My name is Taman. I work for the Galactic Consortium's cartography division." "A map maker?" she said, still focusing on her plants. "What brings a map maker all the way out here?" "I want to ask you about the Luminary expedition, about what really happened in human space." Minji's hands stopped moving. For a long moment, she stood completely still. Then she put down her tools and turned to face him. "I don't discuss the expedition," she said flatly. Her voice had no emotion, but her eyes showed something different. Fear, maybe, or pain. "The official reports don't make sense," Taman said. "People deserve to know the truth." "Truth?" Minji laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You think you want the truth? You don't." She walked past him toward a small office at the edge of the greenhouse. Taman followed her. Inside, she sat at a desk and looked at him with tired eyes. "The humans didn't harm us, Taman. They saved us." She rubbed her hands together slowly. "They pulled us back when we went too far." "Too far into their territory?" Taman asked. "Too far into understanding." She looked out the window at the stars. "We weren't prepared for what exists beyond conventional physics. The humans exist alongside something else, something they've adapted to that we haven't." Taman sat down, across from her. "I don't understand." "Neither did we. That was the problem." She closed her eyes. "We thought we were so clever. We had ships that could bend space. We had computers that could calculate the movement of galaxies. We thought we understood the universe." "What happened to the other ships?" Taman asked quietly. "We found something in human space. Or it found us." Minji's voice grew softer. "Reality is different there. The laws of physics bend. Time doesn't work the way it should." "What did you see?" Taman whispered. Minji opened her eyes and looked directly at him. "I didn't see anything. I understood something. And that understanding nearly broke me." She stood up and walked to a locked cabinet. After entering a code, she removed a small box. Commander Doyun ordered us to record everything. When things started going wrong, he kept recording. She opened the box and took out an old data drive. The humans found us. They rescued my ship, but they couldn't save the others. Not completely. What does that mean? Not completely. Some of the crew are still there, not dead, just existing differently now. She handed him the drive. The humans erased most of our records, but they missed this one. I've never watched it. I don't need to. I remember. Taman took the drive. Why are you giving this to me? Because you came looking. Because someone should know. Minji turned back to the window. The maps stop at human space for a reason, Taman. The humans aren't the danger. They're the wall between us and the danger. Taman couldn't sleep for days after watching Minji's recording. The images were fuzzy and broken, but what he saw changed everything he thought he knew about space and reality. The recording showed strange light patterns that seemed to move in impossible ways. The terrified voices of the crew still echoed in his mind. Now he needed to learn more. Through careful searching, Taman discovered something few people knew existed: a small diplomatic outpost at the edge of human territory. It wasn't on any official maps, but he found references to it in shipping logs and supply records. Getting there wouldn't be easy. Normal ships weren't allowed near the border, but Taman found that a supply ship made regular trips to the outpost. The ship was called the Steady Path, and its captain was one of the few people authorized to approach human space. Taman spent nearly all his remaining money to buy passage on the ship. Captain Hoseok was a quiet man with deep wrinkles around his eyes. He didn't ask why Taman wanted to visit the outpost, which was strange. Most people would have questions. The journey took 2 weeks. As they got closer to the border, Taman noticed the stars looked different somehow. Not in any way he could clearly explain, but they seemed to shine with an unusual quality. Have you ever seen a human? Taman asked Captain Hoseok one evening as they sat in the ship's small dining area. Twice, Hoseok said. Both times at the diplomatic station. They don't come out this far very often. What are they like? Hoseok thought for a moment. They look almost like us, but not quite. Something about their eyes, the way they move. Hard to explain. Have you ever tried to go past the border? Into their space? No need to try, Hoseok said with a small smile. Most ships get turned around before they even realize it. The humans don't even have to engage defenses. Pilots just find themselves going in circles. Navigation systems working perfectly, but somehow always leading away from human territory. How is that possible? Taman asked. That's the wrong question, Hoseok replied. With humans, possibility works differently. 2 days later, they arrived at the diplomatic outpost. It was surprisingly small, just a ring-shaped station with a few modules attached. It floated alone in space, the closest star barely visible in the distance. I'll be back in 3 days, Hoseok told Taman as he left the ship. The station staff knows you're coming. Ambassador Yunji will meet with you. The inside of the station was simple but elegant. The walls were white with strange patterns that seemed to shift when Taman wasn't looking directly at them. A tall woman in formal clothes met him at the dock. I'm Yuna, she said. Ambassador Yunji's assistant. Please follow me. She led him through curved hallways to a meeting room. The windows showed the empty space outside, and in the distance, a faint line of red light, the border of human territory. Ambassador Yunji was older than Taman expected. Her hair was completely white, and she moved slowly as she entered the room, but her eyes were sharp and alert. So, you're the cartographer who's been asking questions, she said, sitting down across from him. Tea? Taman nodded, and Yuna poured them both cups of fragrant tea. How much do you know about humans? Yunji asked. Very little, Taman admitted. That's why I'm here. I want to understand why their space is blank on our maps. Yunji sipped her tea. Humans didn't emerge into galactic society like other species. They were already watching when we thought we were discovering them. What do you mean? Most species follow a similar path. They develop space travel, explore their local system, then their nearby stars. Eventually, they meet others. But humans were different. When our explorers first approached Earth 300 years ago, the humans were waiting. They already knew about us. Taman felt a chill. How was that possible? They didn't have advanced space technology then. No, they didn't. But they had something else. Something we still don't fully understand. Yunji set down her cup. Are you familiar with the concept of dimensional perception? Taman shook his head. Think of it this way. A flat drawing can't perceive depth. A creature that only exists in 2 dimensions can't understand the 3rd dimension. Humans somehow perceive dimensions that the rest of us don't. Are they dangerous? Taman asked, remembering Minji's fearful eyes. No more than a lightning storm is dangerous, Yunji replied. They don't intend harm, but proximity to them changes things on a fundamental level. They perceive and interact with reality differently than we do. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the red line in the distance. They maintain this border not to keep us out, but to protect us. Their reality and ours don't mix well. Things that make sense in their world can break the rules in ours. I saw a recording, Taman said quietly. From the Luminary expedition. Yunji turned to him sharply. That's impossible. All recordings were destroyed. Not all of them, Taman said. What I saw, I don't even have words for it. And that's exactly the problem, Yunji said. Human space operates with concepts we have no words for. Physics we have no equations to describe. She pointed to the red line. Beyond that border, reality follows different rules. And those rules can break minds that aren't ready for them. Taman stared at the distant border. It looked so simple, just a line of light in space. But now he understood it was much more. It was a boundary between different ways of existing. Taman stayed at the diplomatic outpost for 2 days. Ambassador Yunji seemed to like him. She saw his curiosity as honest, not dangerous. On his last day, she made a surprising offer. I could show you more, she said as they walked through the quiet hallways. There are records here that few people have seen, historical documents about early human contact. I thought those were all classified, Taman said. They are, but I have access. She stopped walking and looked at him carefully. What will you do with this knowledge if I share it? Taman thought before answering. I want to understand. Not to expose secrets or cause trouble, just to understand. Yunji nodded. Then follow me. She led him to a small room deep in the station. Inside was a simple table with a computer terminal. The walls were made of some strange material that seemed to absorb sound. When the door closed, the room became completely silent. This is a secure viewing chamber, Yunji explained. What you're about to see is restricted to high-level officials. She typed a series of codes into the terminal. The screen lit up with old files and images. Before the border was created, there were attempts at cooperation with humans, she said. 3 advanced civilizations tried to work with them: the Nari Collective, the Sunwu Democracy, and the Jihun Alliance. Images appeared on the screen, showing beautiful cities and advanced ships. Taman recognized them from history books. All 3 civilizations had been powerful and technologically advanced. All 3 had mysteriously collapsed about 200 years ago. Our history books say they fell due to internal conflicts, Taman said. That was the official story, Yunji replied. The truth is more complicated. She opened a video file. It showed a meeting between alien officials and what must have been humans. The humans looked almost normal, but something about their movements seemed strange, as if they were moving at a slightly different speed than everyone else. Each of these civilizations attempted technological exchange with humans, Yunji continued. They tried to adopt human scientific principles. The next video showed a building shimmering strangely. At first, Taman couldn't understand what he was seeing. Then he realized the building was in 2 places at once. It existed simultaneously in 2 locations, with people walking in and out at both places. What's happening? He asked. The Nari Collective built a transportation hub using human physics. It worked too well. It existed in multiple places at the same time. More videos played, a communication system where people received messages from people who had never been born, energy generators that produced unlimited power until they suddenly turned surrounding matter into something that resembled colorful smoke. Within a decade, all three societies had collapsed, Yunji said softly. Not through war, but through cascading reality failures. Their worlds couldn't handle human concepts. Taemin watched in stunned silence. The videos showed civilizations literally falling apart as reality itself seemed to break down around them. Why would they keep using the technology if this was happening? He asked. By the time they understood the danger, it was too late. The principles had been integrated into their science. Their thinking had changed. Yunji showed him a final document. This was the result. It was an agreement signed by human representatives in the Galactic Consortium. The humans agreed to quarantine themselves behind the border. They promised not to share their technology or scientific concepts with other species. The humans volunteered to isolate themselves, Taemin said in surprise. Yes, they understood the danger before we did. Yunji pointed to a signature at the bottom of the document. This human representative explained it best. He said their minds had evolved along a different path. What was normal for them was toxic to us. Taemin studied the document carefully. The human signature was strangely blurred, as if it couldn't quite exist properly on the page. We're not compatible, Taemin realized. Not out of hatred or fear, but because our realities don't completely overlap. Exactly, Yunji said. Humans exist partially in dimensions we don't perceive. Their science works with concepts we can't fully grasp. When we try to use their knowledge, it's like trying to run complex software on the wrong hardware. Eventually, the system crashes. She turned off the terminal and the images disappeared. This is why the maps stay blank, she said. This is why we keep our distance. Not because humans are evil or dangerous by nature, but because reality itself becomes unstable when our worlds mix too much. As they left the secure room, Taemin felt his mind racing with new understanding. The border wasn't a political boundary. It was a safety measure, protecting both sides from a fundamental incompatibility. Do the humans ever try to contact us? He asked. Sometimes, Yunji replied. They send representatives here occasionally. They seem to be studying us, trying to find ways to communicate safely. But it's difficult. Even their presence can cause small distortions in our reality. Taemin remembered the recording from the Luminary expedition. The strange patterns of light, the terrified voices. They're trapped too, he said, in their own way of existing. Yunji nodded. Two species, separated not by hatred, but by the fundamental nature of reality itself, perhaps the saddest border in the galaxy. When Taemin returned home, he found a message waiting from Jiwoo. The old archivist wanted to meet urgently. They met in a small cafe far from the consortium offices. I heard you went to the border outpost, Jiwoo said quietly. What did you learn? Taemin told him everything, the videos, the collapsed civilizations, the agreement with the humans. Jiwoo listened without interrupting, his eyes growing wider. We need to share this knowledge, Jiwoo said when Taemin finished. Not with everyone, but with people who can understand its importance. Won't we get in trouble? Taemin asked. Only if we make it public. I propose a small, private meeting. Trusted academics who study space and history. 2 weeks later, they gathered in a private room at the university. 20 scholars sat in a circle waiting eagerly. Taemin had prepared carefully, organizing his findings into a clear presentation. Thank you all for coming, he began. What I'm about to share may change how you see the universe. For an hour, Taemin explained everything he had learned. He showed copies of the documents Yunji had shared. He described the border and the strange feeling of being near human space. The scholars asked questions and took notes, their faces showing shock and fascination. The most important thing to understand, Taemin said, is that the border exists for protection. Both ours and theirs. Our realities function differently. When they mix, dangerous things happen. As he spoke these words, a strange feeling filled the room. A subtle change in the air, like a shift in pressure. Taman noticed someone standing at the back of the room, a figure he hadn't seen enter. The person was tall and thin. At first glance, they looked normal, but as they began to walk forward, everyone fell silent. Their movements were too smooth, as if they were flowing rather than walking. Their body proportions seemed slightly wrong, though Taman couldn't explain exactly how. "My name is Minsu," the person said. Their voice was soft, but somehow everyone heard it perfectly. "I serve as an observer." Taman tried to look directly at Minsu's face, but found he couldn't keep his eyes focused there. His gaze kept slipping away, as if the face was too smooth or too complex to properly see. "You're human," Taman whispered. Minsu nodded. "I am. And you have been asking many questions about us." The room was completely silent. Some scholars seemed frozen in fear while others leaned forward in fascination. "Are we in danger?" Jiwoo asked. "Not at all," Minsu replied. "I'm here to observe, not to interfere. Your researcher has the right idea. We aren't hiding technology or resources. We're containing an evolutionary adaptation that makes us incompatible with conventional cosmic existence." Minsu moved closer to the center of the room. The air around them seemed to bend slightly, like heat waves rising from hot ground. "Humans evolved alongside something your species never encountered," Minsu continued. "Our minds developed to perceive and interact with aspects of reality your brains filter out. We don't see it as special. To us, it's normal." "What aspects?" one scholar asked. "That's difficult to explain in your language," Minsu said. "Perhaps a small demonstration would help." Before anyone could object, Minsu raised a hand and made a simple gesture with 3 fingers. The movement seemed to leave trails in the air like after images that lingered too long. Immediately, 5 scholars in the front row slumped in their seats. Their eyes closed, but their faces showed peaceful smiles. The other scholars jumped up in alarm. Taman moved toward the fallen academics, but Minsu raised a hand. "They're fine," Minsu assured the panicked audience. "They're just briefly experiencing reality as we do. Their minds will return shortly." True to Minsu's word, after about 30 seconds, the scholars began to wake up. Their eyes opened, and they looked around in amazement. "I saw," one of them started to say, then stopped, shaking. Her head. "I can't describe it. It was like seeing new colors that don't exist." "That was just a small taste," Minsu said. "A full encounter with human perception would be much more intense. This is why we maintain the border. This is why we keep our distance." Minsu looked directly at Taman. For a brief moment, Taman managed to hold eye contact, and in that instant, he felt something vast and strange touch his mind, like standing at the edge of an ocean so big it had no end. "Your curiosity is admirable," Minsu said. "But some knowledge comes with responsibility. The border protects both our species. Remember that." With those words, Minsu walked back toward the door. Their movements seemed to blur slightly, as if they weren't fully present in the room. Then they were gone. The scholars sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then they began talking all at once, trying to process what they had seen. 3 days later, Taman received a message from Director Kim. He was called to a special meeting at the consortium headquarters. When he arrived, the director handed him a new star chart. Human space was still marked on the map, but the label had changed. Instead of human space, no entry, it now read, "Here dwell those who walk between realities. For the continued stability of all species, respect their boundaries. Your research has been noted," Director Kim said. "The consortium has decided to be more transparent about the nature of the border." Taman nodded. "Thank you." Later that day, he hung a copy of the new map in his office. Every time he looked at it, he remembered Minsu's strange movements and the feeling of touching something his mind wasn't built to understand. Some frontiers, he realized, were better left as borders, and some mysteries protected rather than hid. The end.